Good day, everyone. The subject, there is a sub-subject, which is really the earth, the energy, the savings, the water, et cetera, that is very dear to me. And the Title 24, the energy, the net zero, et cetera, zero net, et cetera, they're all really components of that. Just before, there are a couple of items I'm going to bring up. One is that I gave a talk on water issue for a network of professionals in Orange County, and it actually because they're a general public and there were some engineers, mostly different people, but it would be very interesting just to let you know that that when you go in, I mean, literally going from the Egyptians, from desalination to all of these, just to let you know that that the Rhine River is only 42 centimeters, is only less than 4 feet of water. And Mississippi, the Lake Mead, you all have heard it in the news, but the impact is extremely high. I can't, I don't want to repeat 1 hour of discussion that I had there, but I do want to make sure that every one of you to be part of this concept as an architect, to promote the water savings, to promote, I mean, whether you're doing any landscaping, that is really going to be tough. It's going to be major issues when the farmers are are selling their cattle because they cannot feed the cattle. That's a problem. When they're modifying their harvest, their farming because they do not have enough water for different types of fruit, etc. That's an issue. But there is a major issue that as an architect, you could be part of this solution. Again, as I mentioned, I do have I don't know if I just dragged this, you can see this. It says Greenery. Can you see this, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay. So essentially, whatever I do, I simply bring it up, and let me take this out. Whatever I do is in my blog. The individual who's helping me to keep this is in Hollywood, and we've been working on this thing since 2008. And whatever that I do is in here. I have not been posting a lot of my lectures, but I shall right after Christmas. It'll come down here, and you can pick it up. These were my COVID stuff, and it goes on and on and moves on. So, but whatever is there. But most of my announcements are done in the LinkedIn world, and I got about 12,000 people there. 11,000 people there that are listening to my lectures. And there, the only thing that I bring up is about 148 or 280 characters, and I still bring up my point that we literally have to work together, and that's a general, mostly architects and designers. But since I have you all as listening to this discussion, this whatever I'm going to bring up is really stems from State of California's codes. But I would beg you to simply be part of it. It's not just a designer, but part of a solution, and that I can go on for quite a number of more on this thing, but I just want to emphasize this. At the end of the day, 2025, 2030, 2035, these are the guidelines of the state and where they're going. So they started really with the Title 24, which really started from the oil embargo of 1973 and 1978 started, and slowly this thing became harsher, more stringent. But now that we actually don't have water, we have all of these other issues, and I can go on again for hours on that. It is becoming far more difficult to approach. Again, the LinkedIn is where I do most of my announcements. The blog, which is in Greenery, is where I drop all of these. And when Jeff puts my lectures at the AIAOC channel, it's very hard to find it. So I actually bring it up with my lectures. I drop it in my blog, and you can do a hyperlink and still listen to me with my bad voice. That's but again, I've been around 35 years and I'm 36 years old. So thank you for being young. And 31 states. Oh, by the way, I became the engineer of the year by PM Magazine, Plumbing Mechanical Magazine. I did not know. By the way, this is the hyperlink if you all want to find it. And this is a nice article. What was funny was that I took about 500 photos to come up with 4 photos. I found out how ugly I was because, 496 photos were just bad. But anyway, now I found out how to gauge this. Again, this is where my LinkedIn is, and I put all my 10,981 followers. So just to let you know, I don't write anything. I collect items from all over. I package it and I put it in this format and present it. And I can tell you, I literally collected quite a number of items, and especially when I started doing this in October for IAMO and ICC, it was very difficult. I didn't know where to start because it was hodgepodge of everywhere. It was all over the map. And I needed to sort of bring it in. So I have collected mostly from what SMUD did in Sacramento, had several seminars. And then also ACE Energy had some seminars and some items, and as well as state. I sort of merged them together. So I wanted a cohesion between all the discussion, but at the same time, I wanted to get different reflection from different people. And again, this is a brief section of it, and I'm not really going to go in, and we may not finish because it's 117 pages. And this is only the residential part, and I have the commercial part. I have not even added the commercial to this in depth yet. So you can see it's quite a lot. At the same time, it's just a summary part of it. And so that means that the work is a lot of work out there that you all have to know. And if you do finish this discussion without really completing it, I would beg you to take this. And what I do is I cheat. I either go to one of the read out loud, and there's a little tag on the word, and also you can get an Acrobat. It'll read for you as you're washing dishes or you're doing sweeping, etc. Just go through the whole thing and just grab it. And the most critical part is this, especially for those of you who are doing apartments. And if you have designed your system, and now you're going to be dropping in the beginning of the year, you're going to be having a lot of surprise issues. If you've done residentials, you have laid out all these issues, and then you go back to, and you have these, for example, mechanical rooms all set up. Hello, there's going to be a change. They are asking you to put heat pumps that may or may not be even installed, but they want the room for it, they want the power for it, all of that. The other issue is the batteries. I'm not a battery guy, by the way. I do not go with batteries, and I can talk about that for another discussion. But the issue is that they want you to actually have 60 amp of battery backup in your system design. It has to have a placement for it, power for it, conduit for it, etc. That's a lot of cost that you have to put in. And like the segregation panel in the commercial world, we have never really adopted anything that was supposed to do, but we have to buy the $6,000 panel to install because they are asking us to do it. Guess what? There's a lot of that here, just an FYI. So there is one couple of words that I want to pick up for you guys. Just EDR is energy design rating. It's one of the items that we will see later on. But this particular session, you're looking at the residential side. We have the single family dwelling. There are changes on the electrical, especially if you're not going to an electrical engineer and you are simply taking this to City Hall and doing it. You're going to get lots and lots of changes because of the receptacles, etc., locations. And that's just one part of it. That's on California Electrical Code. And then you got the duplexes, which are still considered single family, and they're in the same category. Up to 3 floors are still considered sort of a dwelling. And then once you go in 4-story, they're considered high rises. That's how it's read. Now, high rise, of course, has many definitions in the building code. You're not going to go that route. Of course, we have the ADU, which is going to sunset by 2025. There are gobbledygoo of items there on its own, and the cities have inputted their own little, peppered their own little code issues. You got to worry about all of that. And now you also have a JADU. There are items that are considered on the JADU. As you all know, if you go for a plan check, you do the design, it sits on somebody's desk. A month later, the guy does, for 1 hour, he does the plan check correction. He sends it out, and many times, like San Diego, don't even read it. They give you 89 corrections. And then you do the work, you give it back to them, you go doing this ping pong, you lose time. So you just simply want to know enough. At least you don't do this ping pong with the city hall quite a number of times. And I can guarantee you that from the city, between the city and the county, only 127 people showed up. And I can tell you, just the city of Los Angeles has 400 inspectors. So they haven't seen it. The counters are already busy plan checking dummy sets for now. So in terms of training this year, this is my, I think, 12th year or 16th year or 15th year that I've been doing this. This is the least amount of training by any organizations, inspectors, architects, engineers, etc. And I don't know if you've done any other seminars besides this, but that's one item. So given that form, the California, previously, when we all took our exams, it talked about the public. First of all, you got to save the people, save the building. Later on, when the Cal Green came out, says we have to save the environment, and they talked about only CO2 levels. Right now, they have multiple other parameters that it deals with climate change, etc. Now that has been peppered into this Title 24 that you can see, and it's now called greenhouse gas emission. That's GHG that has been added. So that's part of the Title 24 that we are all seeing. Now, these are all, as you all know, Title 24 is actually part of the California Code of Regulations, which is part 2024 is a law. And then if they want to do anything with that law, assembly bill came up, the state bill shows up, an executive order comes up, that all of these issues, they have to be, they are going towards carbon neutral. Carbon neutral, they have to go in that route. Of course, there are other state laws that they have to do certain analysis. They got to do financial analysis, etc. That there is no hardship for the general public. But I can tell you, I don't think they did it quite well for these codes that you're going to see now. This is state of California. Those lines are actually depict the type of climate that we have. I've worked on let's say in the colder climate, on the mountains. If you are in the desert or you're close to the ocean, each one of those have an item. But why would it matter? Is because they have subdivided that to 16 zones. And we can see, and by the way, just to let you know, coastal section of around us is about zone 6. A little bit above, as you can see. Let me blow this thing up. Let me go back. I am afraid of messing up my screen. So in the upper coast is called zone 5, and then zone 8 is more like Costa Mesa, Irvine, etc. And then zone 9 is more like Los Angeles Basin, a little away from what I would call 405. To me, 405 gives me a leverage of where the coastal zones are, the Highway 405. So given that note, we have it, and you will see there's a lot of changes on zone 6 that they are looking for. And then there are other mandatory issues that they're looking for. So you have to know which zone you're dealing with, et cetera. And I know that we now have a little bit of the AIA organization from a little bit of a north from us. So now what I have is a bird's eye view. Okay, I'm going to enlarge this so that we can look at it a little better. In the bird's eye view, let me get nice. in the bird's eye view, I'm only looking at a single family home, okay? And then I'm going to go to multifamily, and then high rise. Really, it's in the high rise definition of high rise is funny, is that anything which is common areas is considered commercial, but once you're inside the space is considered dwelling. So it sort of mimics to both laws in residential and non-residential. On a multifamily of a 3-story, even a 2-story, they consider it as an apartment, and those apartments do consider both residential. So it's like a hybrid. So let's go back. So if you're looking at a bird's eye view, the first item that you should be looking at is mandatory measures. It doesn't matter whether you're using a computer program or you're using a prescriptive method. By the way, for me, it means a black box. Technically speaking, there is, the state simply is you can't have any windows, and your R values are R38 and R this. And believe it or not, I will show you with one architect that I work very closely. I have R values of R60 and R88 because we are using these impermeable foams, and therefore I can have more windows. But the way the state is looking at that prescriptive is looking at it literally almost a black box with so much restrictions that it doesn't matter whether you use the program or use prescriptive. A mandatory, which really I'm emphasizing here, is the ones that you must do regardless of what you're talking about, okay? So mandatory is mandatory. By the way, the word man part, it means hand in Latin, like emancipation is handscription, okay? Manicure, just to let you know, that's where the word man comes from. It's not a human being, man, it's literally hand. Or manos in Latin, in Spanish. But anyway, the mandatory measures, and then you have the prescriptive, which is a cookbook theory. You look up some things and you look up the areas for different sides of the walls, and you have this type of glass and this type, and then check, and then you fill up the forms, you sign it, and you move on. The performance, it uses there are 3 computer programs that a state has given. There is the one that I have been using, the free one, which is CBEC, and then you have 2 other companies that have gone due diligence. I don't use them. I won't get into that discussion, but that's the performance measurement. And now let's go to the mandatory measures, and this is a bird's eye view. Remember 4, 8 through 16. Remember that? 6 was the ocean, 8 and 9 was Los Angeles and Costa Mesa and Irvine area, right? So, and then these are the mandatory, and you simply see some things that say R5, I've been putting R30, et cetera, et cetera. That's minimum mandatory. If you don't do anything, that will be there. Now, if you exceed those numbers, that is fine. So the new attic system, that is in climate zone 4, 8 through 16. The new attic system requires insulation either above or below the deck or combination thereof. And that U factor, you will have an R5. So okay, R5 is technically nothing. But there's one item I'm going to bring up, and because I do Title 24s as well, is that first of all, I'm going to use my magic pen. These are little excerpts that, I'm sorry, what happened? Sorry. Okay, this, come on, I went too fast. Okay, this is a attic per se. If this is insulated and you insulate this, and if you put your mechanical ductwork here, you get far more credit for your Title 24. Just an FYI, because that duct is in the conditioned space. The only problem is that if you're going with an R38, and R38 is a 2x12, which is an 11 and something inches, etc. Then, but those rafters are 2x6, you're in trouble. Then you have to net it, and somebody grabs, starts yelling, just complaining that engineer is very expensive, etc. But at the same time, if this mother is inside that attic, the architect, can have more glazing. So just an FYI. Now let me give you one more. If you simply insulate this as well, now this attic space, if this is your house, and this is a temperature and this is the outside temperature, this right here, because there is no air movement within that attic, the temperature of an attic could be 10 degrees almost higher than the temperature outside. So I can tell you this, that if you prescribe this method where you encapsulate the both part, the attics in many cases will not contribute energy, far least impact on the inside of the house. Plus the fact that the air conditioning pricing goes down, and in every study that we have done, is that price of a insulation, the payback is less than 2 years, and it's a passive. It lasts forever. It is wonderful. And there was a case that we had, that a lady in Mission Viejo was a single lady, and when she was turning on her tap water, it was really hot. What was happening is that though she would come in, the high heat of the attic would warm up the water, and she had to wait for so long because the water was actually so hot. Just an FYI. You can see the drawings. Oh, I know why, because I'm going to do this again. Thank you for that note. It happened this morning. I was teaching. Let me see. Anyway, let's move on. My recommendation is the following. When you're doing insulation, please insulate the actual roof as well as the attic floor, and have an encapsulated. All I can tell you, I've done it myself. It's wonderful. And the temperature gradient between outside and the inside, because of that, is very, very good. And you will also save on the Title 24 as well. So let me move on. So in this particular case, they are simply saying if you have an attic or a rafter only, that would be that's where the application is. Of course, if you have a horizontal roof member, there are two sections. One is that member actually has to have that within that cavity, air has to move, and I promote putting that air impermeable the insulation with foam, and people hate it. And of course, I recently found out the different foams, because of the supply issues, they're very expensive. But I can tell you the R value is absolutely great, and the STC, sound transmission coefficient, is fabulous. Let me go to the kitchen hood. We thought that we were done with a kitchen hood. Kitchen hood comes about in the section 150 of the Title 24. I went too far. They now have a prescription. This would be for more of a home, or a typical home, but most of the homes that I've been doing is far larger. But there is a table that you must follow. So if you are doing a home that you are not going to an engineer, you must follow section 150.0 parentheses O0. That's an O1G. There is a table 150.0G, that you must follow, and it gives you the guidelines and also the actual pipe sizing, etc. We will see the table. I'm showing that table further on. Ventilation duct sizing. Oh, by the way, so sorry. A part of that hood, whether it's a gas or natural gas, electric or natural gas, that hood sizing must be tabulated. So if you're doing a small home, no engineers involved, you must involve that particular duct sizing. Also, that hood table. Also for the duct sizing, it's there. The flow rate is involved. The flexible, they're using flexible duct, etc. All of that is part of that game. So you just have to be careful. Okay, these are the new nightmares. Energy storage system, battery ready. They are asking you, I'm going to say it right here, 60 amps. They are asking you to design the entire system with 60 amp of battery backup for a future house that will have a building that you're designing with a future battery that may or may not be installed. And by the way, you must have all the amenities, including the connections, etc. And they are also asking you for you to have, all these circuits, because they are looking at 4 circuits feeding the refrigerator, 1 light nearby the primary egress, sleeping room, receptacle outlets, etc. They're assuming the power is out, and these batteries will act for you as an emergency backup. One more item. In National Electrical Code, they were asking for only a 60 amp for a small apartment, 100 amp for an apartment, for a bigger apartment, or for a residence. So sorry. You will now have a system of 225 amp panel will be your minimum size. There's no discussion whether this house is 1,000 square feet. And by the way, up to 2,500 with not much amenities, 225 will be fine. As soon as you get to 3,000 and you add a little bit of stuff in there, steamer, et cetera, and with a little fancy stuff, you'll be at 400. And by the way, just an FYI, at 400, you're still okay. Once you get to 600, you have to put a transformer in front of the house. So the 225 is your minimum. So let's go back. The storage system, energy storage system, the battery ready system is in section 150.0, parentheses S. All that standard simply says you will have minimum 60 amp. That will be connected. All that connections, all the circuits that you have to have in your panels has to be identified there. Then you will have 225 amp panel there. And then you will once you have the panel board, look at this, sufficient space reserved for transfer switch, 3 feet in front of the panels, and all the goodies that you have to do in order to maintain clearances per California Electrical Code. So just an FYI, surprise, surprise, all that has to happen. So if you have already designed it and a month later, you got to go back and modify that area where your electrical. Now, most of these houses, the electrical room is not a room. It's a little bunker, little pop out outside of the wall, somewhere in that area. Now, if you're putting these battery systems, let's say 60 amp, you can 50 kW will be 100 amps, so will be like 40 or 30 kW. No, it'll be more like 40 kW. 40 kW, and these batteries come in 5 kW, 10 kW, etc. So hypothetically, you're looking at 4 battery system, 4 10 kW batteries hanging out somewhere. And now you have to protect it from the weather. Please, 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 please do not put it in front of the sun. If you have a location and you have not located, please put it on the north side or east side with a lot of shade. If it's on the west side, please, please, because these batteries, I've done a lot of lecture on what happens to plastics with time. And please, 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 away from the sun, and whatever you got to do, please do it. But assume now you are looking at, and by the way, these batteries are not cheap. You have to have all the clearances. So you're looking at, if it's going to be outside, you're going to have all the other issues with regard to clearances, so on and so forth, with all the wirings and all the stuff that goes with it. So if it's inside, then you have to deal with it in a room format. All the raceways shall be installed right here. All the raceways shall be installed between the panel board and the system as if it's going to be. You just bring the battery, plug it in, you're done. Okay? Just an FYI, you got to be ready. This is a bird's eye view. I've not even gone into the details yet. Now, electric ready. What is happening is that, what is happening is that that they are assuming that within the lifetime of the building, let's say 30 years, okay, but the houses, as you get closer to the ocean, the life expectancy of the home or the usability goes higher and higher. And if it's in different, away from the water or away from the mountains, the town changes, shift, and people bring down the building and so on and so forth. But the assumption that they're doing is for the following, let's say 30 years. Within 30 years, we are not going to have any natural gas. Remember to 2035 that you're not going to have any gas consuming automobiles. They're not giving you a date, but they're simply saying gas and propane is gone. So if you have a furnace, cooktop, dryer, water heaters, everything that you can think of, thou shalt provide proper amperage in case a electric system is brought in. So you spend now. There was a discussion that I heard on YouTube. The guy says, "Let me think about this. I'm spending all this money to bring the gas supply in, right? Yeah, okay. You're bringing all this gas piping in. You're putting an X amount for the gas piping, and you're buying the water heater in gas. But at the same time, you're putting the electric. And if the electric is going to be there, and I am being forced, I can't use that word, they're essentially being pushed towards having a solar, and the sun is there for free, right? So why do I need gas? Essentially, that's a discussion that in this case, it simply says dryer, cooktop, furnace, all of that will be gas, and you have to have breakers allocated for it in the panel and assume that load is going to be on the panel, so the panel is going to be as large as it's supposed to be. There's one Gomer Pyle moment I call surprise, is this right here. They are saying that if I have a gas or a water propane heater gas, it's something there, they are simply saying that water heater, the fluid that's leaving, I'm going to do some energy recovery. At the same time, they're thinking of, in terms of what's called a heat pump water heater, is an electric system that the heat pump system and the hot water system they'll be creating. Now, I personally, since I've seen it in the shows, etc., I've not been a believer yet. And then the manufacturers, I've not talked to the nerds yet in the factory. Their brochures, etc., reveal nothing. The only thing that I saw was on Ace Energy that simply said that they will save anywhere between 11.3 to 15% of electricity. But even if you are not installing it, it has to be accommodated. It says a space right here, says a space large enough to accommodate a heat pump or water heater. Again, is a heat pump as well as a water heater. So it's a hybrid system. Just to let you know that these are alone on their own is enough headache to package this. And again, remember, when you're doing a house, you have to do what's called the feeder analysis, because the connected load of a house could be 800 amp, but you could be only using 400 and 600 based on Section 240 of the National Electrical Code, California Electrical Code. All of these have to be in that calculations. Remember, I said about how many square feet gives you about what amperage, etc. Just an FYI. So if you add these up and takes you to the 400 amp section, hello, it's 400 amps. So just in case, okay? These are what I would call the Gomer Pyle moments that I talk about. And by the way, they actually tell you that the cooktop will be 50 amp, the furnace will be 30 amp, and then the 30 amp for the electrical feed for the heat pump water heater. There is one item I'm going to bring up now because I'm fearful that we may not talk about it later. In about somewhere around 1994 or so, state came out and simply says all heating system of the building shall be gas. And they said, if you are electric, we allow you. So if you have 100,000 BTUs of gas for heating that building, we'll allow you to put 10% of that to be electric. Later on, that 10% went bye-bye. Okay. So now right now, as of till January 1st, you cannot have any electric heat. But then they came up with a provision. If you provide solar system, in lieu of the heating that you're generating, electricity that you're generating by your solar system, you can take that and spend it on your electrical heating. By the way, in my house that I designed, I allowed electrical heating. I put 48 panels. I can talk about that for hours. I did all the economic analysis of it, et cetera, et cetera. I installed it myself. And by the way, we put 48 panels after it was fully ready on the grids, on the unit struts. We actually had it done in less than 9 hours, all connected, ready to go. Once you have it done, is what I would call an IKEA is a plug and play. That's how they have made all the connections. So just an FYI, just to let you know that the electric heating is back. Now, there are homes in Newport. There's a little tower with seven-story there that in lieu of that, we were taking heat pumps and we used the heat pumps to gain the heat for the winter. And but heat pumps, please, when you do a design with a heat pump, the heat pump design for the summer and heat pump design for winter are different sizes. Because when you say I have a 5-ton system, the delta T of the heat pump for winter, and by the way, Newport Beach for the past 42 years has never come down less than 38 or so. But let's say you're using heat pump somewhere that is 35 degrees. When you subtract 35 from 75, which is your comfort temperature, that's the delta T of 40. When you go on the cooling side, let's say you have 105, the delta T on the cooling side is 35 and 75. You do not design the heat pump based on the cooling. You have to design it based on heating. So somebody comes out and says, oh, how many ton you have? And you give them the tonnage and they go, you're crazy. That's a lot of tonnage. I only put 4 ton. They don't realize that this is a heat pump. Heat pump goes one way, gives a heat, and the other way gives a cooling, but the delta T of the design for that building is different. So just an FYI, just in case you get into that discussion with someone. So we talked about this. Okay, again, I am moving on. There is an architect in Orange County that I work that only designs heat pump. By the way, I was sort of scared of that because the first time that he told me we got to go heat pump, I literally for days and days, as a nerd, I sat down for days. I studied the temperature rating from here till San Diego. I felt comfortable. I had a conversation with a lot of manufacturers. I felt comfortable and moved on. But what is happening is this: heat pump space heating is not just pushed. I'm going to emphasize, says required. You are technically, they are pushing you for zone 3, 4, 13, and 14. By the way, no one says you cannot design it for other zones. The only problem that you have, if you go to the mountain zones, mountain areas, where you are dealing a delta T of a giant delta T of, let's say, a -10 and 75, which is comfort, of dealing with 85 degrees, your heat pump becomes enormously large. And that's why you have hydronic system there. You got other elements, and you could still use the heat pump. You just design something in one of the Mammoth, where you still can use the heat pump for cooling. But guess what? for very, very mild heating, you can use the heat pump for that purpose, and you do not have to integrate your hydronic system. So you could do a hybrid and you could play with it and go with it. But again, they are forcing you, and simple says zone 3, 4, 13, and 14. And I know one of the reasons that particular architect always stayed with a heat pump, he just didn't like the furnaces, because these furnaces require flue ducts, et cetera, even though you can use a high efficiency system and use those plastic PVC piping system. Anyway, I've said enough. Domestic water heating system, they are really pushing you to go through prescriptive and allow and go through the heat pump water heater system or a solar hot water system. And that's why they are pushing you that direction. And then with it, and they are simply saying that if you have the solar savings coming up, I will let you do this. So is a give and take. They're playing with it. And again, all of these, they're accommodating exactly reverse of 1994 or so, where they were saying, no gas, hello, no gas. Now it's just completely opposite. Stay with me. Exceptions to the prescriptive domestic hot water system, if you use tankless. I have written so many articles against tankless that I've got invited to go to Japan. I actually was with Reem for 1 week, and because I wrote all the articles against them. And I can talk about that for hours, but that's not here. But if you do not want to use those systems, if you go tankless, you're okay. And mind you, that my design for tankless is 1 tankless for 2 bedrooms. Okay, stay with me. That's not a discussion for here, but I can talk about it for hours. I can send you all the articles in the world. And if the dwelling is very small, 500 square feet or less, square feet space, and you go with an instantaneous water heaters, very, very small baby stuff, you're okay as well. New dwellings with 1 bedroom may use, they do have a very small heat pump water heaters, a very, very small. And then, by the way, the definition of bedroom, please verify, is getting changed. If you're working in Malibu, any room, you want to call it office, call it office. You want to call it exercise room, they will call it a bedroom for different reasons, because they have a private sewer system, and they use that number for calculation for the leach field and the other areas. But and again, in many cities, that number of bedrooms, but in mechanical code, that has been changed. The word is habitat, comfort, transient, non-transient. That's a different discussion, which I had this morning. And just to let you know what a bedroom is, when a new bedroom is defined differently. So there is, but 120 volt is 1920 watts, which is very, very, very small. So they're giving you a little leverage, and those are really based on when a code is designed, they have to design it in such a way that, first of all, it has a 15-year payback and is not a hardship, and the general public is not suffering financially for it. There are a couple of other code sections. I was in multiple code issues, and that's where I learned it. So solar voltaic. No solar photovoltaic will be required on a new home if the requirement is 1.8 kW, which is very, very small. Again, if you are a certain financial crunch and you're building a very small house, and there's an equation, by the way, you have to use to find out how many kWs you need. And if your kW size is less than 1.8, okay, I'll let you go. No problem. If you're doing an ADU or a JADU, I'm going to read this off, that says IAQ fans are, no, I'm sorry, that was, again, those do not come into play with ADUs or JADUs. ADUs are 800 and 1200 square feet, and they could be smaller, but they don't push it that direction. Addition, the IAQ fans are prescribed, prescriptively required for additions, et cetera. It's not a major issue, by the way. It's a very, very simple issue. But let me give you one item. I'm going to actually try my fabulous pen and see if I can share this. And then if it doesn't work, I'll talk about it. It worked this morning, but okay, let me see. Share. No, I'm not going. I'm too chicken. I'm not going to risk this. Okay, let me give you the following. Um, there are two ways. First of all, the IAQ is really at the mothership of that is ASHRAE, and the actual code is ASHRAE 62.1. 62.1 travels quite of a distance in different arenas, but let's stay focused on the residential. One of the items that if you all that have studied the lead, for example, there is a concept of what's called degassing. Degassing is formaldehyde. And if you remember the Katrina story, they gave like 20,000 mobile homes to these little trailers, and people had to leave them within 1 year because the formaldehyde was literally hurting them. So degassing is actually doesn't stop. It actually continuously is there. And if you want to ask me where, I don't see it, I don't feel it. What happens is that if you see a dashboard of your car, as soon as it's getting old in the sun, it starts getting brittle. What happens is plastics go through a process of thermoplast to go to thermoset, where a plastic is not hard, is not bendable anymore. That is called degassing. Every material almost in the world is continuously is getting cooked by temperature, by UV, by aging, etc., is giving off a little bit of a gas. Now, if you're in Colorado and you are doing lead or you're doing ARE exam, and Colorado question comes up with radon, etc., degassing becomes a major issue because you got to take the radon off, etc. So it's the same way as you're taking the smell of a brand new car, of a plastic that smells. That's called degassing. That's where it came out. And then the other one became the IAQ. IAQ became about from the whole house fan. If you recall, there was a model of a house with a little fan on the top and was sucking all the air and bringing fresh air into the space. It was bringing fresh air and also taking the house and was cleaning it out. Now, for a house, they actually have an equation from ASHRAE 62.1. It comes about and gives out how much ASHRAE 62.1, how much fresh air you must continuously bring into the building, continuously, even if you're not there, okay? You can be in your mother-in-law's and stay there, but these fans will be continuously operating. Now, there are two ways. One, you put a whole house fan, or you have all these bathroom fans, Panasonic, Air King, and everybody else has it, which works in two modes. One of them is continuously working, taking CFM out. Generally, by the way, the minimum of the code is 20 CFM. And once you get into the room, there's a motion sensor, takes it at 6 to 10 air changes to take the fume odor, et cetera, out. Now, the question is because there is a code section, and another code section says, if the bathroom has an openable window, does that count? No, sir. No, ma'am. You got to put a fan, therefore you can keep that window closed. If you don't do that, you got to put a whole house fan. Now, that we simply, in our office, we simply calculate the area, the number of bedrooms, etc. We do the calculation, and X number of CFM comes out, and we have the CFMs in the bathrooms work out. It's not a lot of CFM, but there is a CFM. There was one of the corrections that we received, multiple cities, by the way, just not once, where we have a basement. So you have a 1 or 2 story, and then you have a basement. So B, 1 and 2. They do not allow the basement to be part of the first and the second floor. I can do the first and second floor in one package and say, do my whole house. Both the county, and most of my jobs are in the county or city of Newport or in Del Mar. Those cities come back and says, hello, no. The basement is sort of suffocated and cannot get enough fresh air. And you have those tunnels that for escape tunnels and or for lights that you have those are not sufficient. So what we have been doing, we have been actually putting an exhaust fan and a fresh makeup air to do this IAQ whole house fan issue, which is actually 62.1. Just an FYI. that has been there. Now, another item that is there is in terms of duct system. I can tell you the following. This was about long before these discussions. The appendix of the mechanical code and came by and says, by the way, I am not going to let you use duct tape, seal this thing, and kiss this thing goodbye, because they found out that 10 to 15% of the leakage of the air conditioning is through the duct system because they are bad and etc. By the way, just I'm going to open up a parenthesis. Commercial is only and only rigid. The last 3 to 5 feet is flexible. In the residential, still flexible. Okay. However, if you go to these homes that you're looking at, you see they have smashed these, and the framer does its own thing, and this guy does its own. They have taken these ducts, literally smashed it, and these are flexible. They have choked them, and they're actually not. They're suffocating, and that's one issue. The other one is they're going to be clearly making a pinhole here and there. Now, we have what we call Hirsch rating. Formerly, we were allowed to have about 15% leakage here and there. Now you must be within 10%. Now, you really want to be zero, but zero in absolute value. And as a absolute consulting engineer, I can tell you absolute values don't exist. But just to let you know, they are doing these testing. They are making it much tighter and tighter. That means that a mechanical contractor who puts these systems together and the seals are not perfect and there is a pinhole, they're going to be having fun trying to find out where the hole is. I don't know if they can do a smoke dye test, etc. So they have to do it after it is well fit before the drywall. So that's one of the changes. By the way, I know, Jeff, you were going to do a test at 5:30, 5:28.
It doesn't have to happen right then. It's whenever you want to start the break.
No
and
problem.
By the way, Sam, I did put in chat when you are ready for the break, and then at the end, you may want to open it up for Q&A. There's been a few things in the chat where questions came up.
I have a suggestion. I'm thinking loud. If you can go through the chat questions, let me go through this particular. Let me go through this mini slides right here, and let's open up the questions, and then we'll go back again. Okay.
Okay.
Let me just finish this. This was again where we are right now. We are in the bird's eye view of the code. I've not even got into the code. I'm just rambling, going on and on and on the major highlights of the code. Now, with regard to the ceiling, again, there was a discussion that at least you will have R49, zone 1 through 4, 6, Costa Mesa, 8 through 16. Now, lo and behold, you guys are the architects. R49, R38 fits nominally in a 2x12. Now, first of all, I want to apologize. I don't know if I go Home Depot, I can pick up an R49. So it'll be an R11 and an R38 pushed together. Maybe you got to net this together, all that. But 8 through 16, 8 and 9, 6, 8, and 9 is here. So just to let you know, exceptions are 1, 3, 6, 8 with existing R19 verified. And that is if you are doing, I forgot to say, alterations. If you're doing alterations and you have an R19 existing for those 3 zones, otherwise, if you're altering the ceiling, you got to be at R49. Let me take two other parts. Steep slope roofs. These items really came out from LEED. I'm actually doing another LEED test for myself to upgrade. And all I can tell you, they're there. HSRI, you have what's called a new SRI. You got to go to the manufacturer and look for the word aged. Aged is the 3-year average where a roof member has been actually in front of the sun, has been aged for 3 years. And now that SRI value, if it is sloped in those climates, has to be SRI of 0.2. And for a low slope roof is 0.63. And for zones 1, 2, 4, 8 through 16 is R14. I guess this would be a great position before I get to that. I would be blind if you can, Jeff, go through the questions and let me answer them.
Yeah, I only see one. So if I missed some other ones, please take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask. So this one, it was about 5:03 when it was put in chat. Is the battery required for a custom single house, or is this for tract homes?
Let's go back. There is no difference between a custom and a tract home. Single family home is a single family home. Now, let me tell you this, in multiple projects, in fact, long before this, and Ben Ellington was the plan checker, we had an issue and we literally went back and wrote an alteration that we simply says, you're putting solar, can I do this? Can I modify some things? And right now is a barter system. Right now simply says you will have solar. Oh, I'm sorry. You will not have solar if you're less than 500 square feet or your square footage says, oh, you're 1.8 kW. As soon as you're 1.9 kW, thou shall be putting solar. Whether it's a custom or a tract, it does not make any difference. The only one issue I have to bring this thing up. So assume this is the roof of my house. This might, I guess I'm supposed to show here. This is the roof. In a tract home, this rotates 4 times. By the way, it could rotate 20 different angles, but the Title 24 says we will consider northeast, southwest, and if it's in this angle, within 45 degrees of that angle, east or west, and by the way, you can simply cheat and find out which 45 degrees is to your favor. But you are rotating this 4 different directions, okay? You identify in a tract that you will have the worst Title 24, and for the sake of argument, when the front is facing north, because all your westerly glazing is facing the sun. That you have to design for a tract universally for all of them. Unless you want to break the monotony of tract and say units 44 and 33, et cetera, will do this, et cetera. And then you're going to tell the people who are buying it, you're not buying the same home. You're not buying the same tract home. Just for those who are using tract, please watch out. You got to take the worst case. And then in this case, the 2023 codes all come into play. Then you got to take that to be your reference model home for the rest of the tract. Very good question. Very interesting. I've not done tract, God knows how long ago. We did a long time ago, but that was a very good question. And maybe this is a good time for you. I'll take a short break and you can do your little pop quiz.
You've got one other question came in as you were responding to the last one. You want to take that right now and then we'll do the
Yes,
poll?
please. Yes, please.
Okay. Are there modifications to the requirements if the project is a renovation with no change of floor plan?
Well, that is, I'll call that a mystery. I've done, with one hand, I've done a lot of magic. It's pretty hard to pull out a rabbit with one hand out of a hat, but it really depends how you read the code and find the definition of the code. I'll give you an example. I'll use this example and I'll go back. And again, and when I teach code, I simply go to definition and standards because I do about 2 or 3 court cases a year that you got to know the English of the code. So based on that English, you got to go to the governing body or the AHA and have that discussion to find out what are you doing. Now, number 1 is that are you touching the envelope? The envelope is the cap, the walls, and if it's raised floor, the bottom. If those are not touched, technically, no. However, you go back and you're putting a fireplace, you're opening up Cal Green. This is no longer a Title 24, I'm sorry, the energy compliance for the building. If you're touching something else, those have a different sections of the code that you have to modify. Okay. So, but if you are not touching anything of the envelope, technically you're not doing something. Now, there is one exception in non-residential. As you all know, let's say for the sake of argument, Irvine Company or the malls, so that I have done a lot of mall work. Every 3, 5, 10 years, or even if you have a franchise by, let's say, In-N-Out is not franchise, let's say a Subway, you must modify your interior. Sometimes they say you must modify your front door, just the front door as you enter. What is happening is that code has become smart. Has somebody said if you're changing your storefront by 150 square feet and you do this prescriptive ABCD, you don't have to do anything. You're touching the envelope, but I'm giving you a prescription. Okay. Those are some things that are there, but I highly would identify what is your code change. I'm going to give you one more item that I went through hell in the city of, it was San Clemente. They went to an outside plan checker, and this is what was happening. It was a modification of the third floor and the second floor only. The code, which I have been doing literally from the original Title 24, this section has never been changed, says you will only do the Title 24 for a tributary area. Now, if you're doing an addition on this side of the house and you're doing another addition on the other side of the house, you can actually do 2 separate addition or modification to Title 24s and call it a day. But now, if you're doing modifications that are relatively close, you could bring some of the existing house and what we call a thermodynamic space. So you can take the thermodynamics location 1 and 2, merge them together, a little bit of an interior of the existing, and call it one thermodynamic space. Now, we ran through this with CBEC, everything worked fine. Everything was wonderful. Everything worked fine. But the problem is that the outside plan checker, I don't want to name him, I won't name him. The outside plan checker, none of the plan checkers work with CBEC, which is a state licensed program, right? They said, you got to use the other ones. And I literally told the guy, you are telling me that the state of California made a mistake, went to Babcock's group, and they wrote a software, etc. The main issue I found out, he did not know how the Title 24 was read. And he did not know what a thermodynamic, when I told him about, so those are some of the things that you got to watch out. And it's a long-winded answer, I apologize, but I just want to say that read the English, and you better speak English of the words that you pick up from the code when you go for your challenge. Sorry for the long-winded answer.
So, Son, you've got 2 more questions. You want me to read them off?
Yes. Let's do them. Okay. I'm not rolling, guys.
Okay, so the next one is, how about a window replacement?
That goes to the envelope. Now, there was this guy in LA radio base with an accent. Oh, I will change your windows. I will do this. I will do that for you. Hello, I am so sorry. You can't touch the envelope. I have to actually give you one. I'm a consultant to TM Cop. I've actually did all of their factories, and I deal with all of their NFRC issues, and I go through their Christmas occasions, et cetera, et cetera. All I can tell you is the following. The answer is no. You touch the envelope. Now you can, there's some cities do have a little guideline. If you're doing window replacement, you have to go through the prescriptive, so you don't have to have an engineer on board. But then I recently did some work in Manhattan Beach, and the guy had me on a ringer just for that. Just an FYI. And if you have right now a house in Palm Desert, you're going through certain things like this. But technically, the code says no, because you touched the envelope. But they do have a remedies in the prescriptive section. Hopefully, you can use that prescriptive and go from there. Next question.
Okay. If we are typically using the performance approach to our energy calculations, would it be a best practice to implement these mandatory measures you have been reviewing with us?
First of all, the performance measures are harder than the mandatory. So the performance, when the guy comes out, remember we said you have to have R5 or R19 here and there, et cetera, et cetera. When you have 5 square feet of glass, more glass, and you're not using a solar band of 70, and you're using a very, very low solar heat gains, hello, you're going to have an issue. I can tell you this, that the performance, the only reason you went to performance is primarily because you cannot make it with the prescriptive, which is predominantly the mandatory. So that's forgiven. The only one issue, I have to bring this to you. So we do the Title 24, and many good engineers surrounding me do the Title 24. And then some group who advertise online, and there are literally, one of them was my competition who redid my Title 24, and he was 475 miles away. For a cheaper price, they redid the Title 24. There is one item, and I beg you, and I beg every one of you, especially the licensee is you. And then when we are only documentation author, you all are actually the designer, and the liability goes to you. There are multiple items there that is hidden in the Title 24. If the HERS rater is good, if the inspector is good, something comes out, and they find out at the end, when the paint is done, the fancy the carpet is on, etc. It's irreversible. It is very, very, very difficult. And in many times, a lot of people use very, very high efficiency systems like me, because my houses are like a fish bowl. We put that in, but we have it announced. It is in the plan. It's in the process, etc. They put it in, and they do not put the correct efficiency of the water heaters, etc. And oh boy, heartburn, especially the homeowners are technically moving in. Those are found at the final plan check. So to answer your question, the performance, it's much more difficult than the mandatory. Mandatory is the base.
Okay, thank you, Sam. So now we are going to go ahead and launch.
What time do we end, Jeff? Is it
6:30?
6:30. We could take a 5-minute break if you wish.
Okay, so then what I'm going to do, it is, let's just say it is 5:44 is what I have. We'll restart again at say 5:50, but I'm going to put this poll up, and I would like all of you to respond to it. This is going to help Christine and Marilee and I out as we plan for 2023. It's simple. It didn't require any notes during the program, but if you could go ahead and answer it, that would be great. And I'll just leave it up until Sam comes back. So immediately what this is telling me is you need more Z and CD. I see many of you have attended other ones. That's great. And again, early on, and not all of you were on at the time, while both of our chapters will be preparing those Z and CD courses, you can also go through AIA California and their Climate Action Series. They do have them at AIACA.org. You can review them. They've been recorded, but you have to take a test. So it's really better just to sign up for them and just take them. They're typically like an hour long at lunchtime. Things are going pretty well. We had 69 responses out of 83, so I'll just leave it here for a little longer, and we'll just wait. When Sam gets back, I'll go ahead and pull it down. I see a few of you haven't taken the poll yet. If you could please do so, that's just really going to help our 2 chapters out. Thank you. Yeah, I'll be able to put them on mute here in a second. Okay, I see that we're at about 5:49 right now. I haven't seen any new ones come in. So I'll go ahead and end the poll. Thank you. We have 44 that said yes. This is their first one, but we have 31 that says no. So that's good. That means that some of you have been able to engage some of the other ZNC programs that are going on. And please know there'll be quite a few of them. There are, like I mentioned, there are ones at AIACA.org that you can do virtually. It will require a test. Always better to do them virtually and in person to kind of skip that test. So look for those and look for our chapters, Longgate, South Bay, and Orange County, as we continue to offer these through the year. So I will end it and I'll turn this back over to you, Sam.
Very good. Before I continue, in the discussion about whether you can go to City Hall and modify and do some debate on the code, just one example that we had, and this was in the city of LA, and this was on electrical lighting Title 24. The code says that if you touch 10% of the lights, thou shalt now do the entire floor, and you got to modify the Title 24 for the current code, which at that time was 2019. What is happening is that there is one section of the code that says MIP, modified in place, that we actually, I am an engineer for a high rise called, right now it has USC name on it, it's called South Park. I've been there for about 20 years now. And what is happening is that we're talking about 12,000 square feet plate of et cetera, and then in terms of TI, that would have been major cost. And the architect was only going to modify something here, there, et cetera. And again, I got to tell you, I have a very high respect for the plan checkers in LA. They are very good engineers, and their questions and their critique and or corrections are very well justified. In any case, essentially, I took that word MIP, modified in place. By the way, that section of the code in the commercial, still there. You take that, and we simply said the unit, the T-bar is gone. The unit is here. The whip, that the connection, electrical connection, is still there. We are bringing it down, and we are taking it back to the same position. We are talking about $150,000 or so. It was a Department of Transportation site that we were working on. But all I can tell you, there are words that you got to really feel it, communicate it, and go from there. In fact, we have one situation right now that we're working on, and we like to play because one guy is doing a very interesting lighting system savant in Newport, and we're working on it. And we have to let the city know that Savant has created this new system so that we don't get into a pickle. We just don't want to be in that position. And I love ping pong. I just don't want to be in a ping pong position with a plan checker. And by the way, these are some of the sources. When you see this in PDF, all the hyperlink are still alive, so you can pick that up. as I said, we are now zooming in to certain parts. And by the way, I took most of these slides from SMUD, the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, I think. And essentially says that previously we were only looking at BTUs or wattage. And then later on, they came out with the CO2. Now they have gone a little further. If you have worked with a building which does Star Energy, which is an EPA, they took a lot of items, and I do for a couple of high rises, I do that Star Energy for them annually. And what happens is that they simply took a lot of EPA component and merged it into these. So there is an EDR, the different types of EDRs that they look. Now, when you are looking at when the modeling is actually analyzes, the Title 24 analyzes the building, it models all three at the same time. All three must comply before we talk about the Title 24 is done. By the way, some of the Title 24s I do literally takes 3 days. It's going to be fun to do to the new Title 24 with these amenities added to it as a flavor. So only a building compliance only if all three compliance scores are met. Each proposed design is lower or equal to a standard design score. What is standard design score? What happens is that they assume that you have a house, a box, and this particular box is a home, has so many easterly, westerly, southerly, and northerly windows. It is so many square feet, and that is used as a model. They take that computer model, they do the analysis. By the way, all of these came from Department of Energy software 25, 30 years ago, many, many years ago. And they take that, and that sub great grandbaby of that program is this model that you're talking about. And then they take this model, they analyze it. Now is your home. You have designed it. Now you do the input, you do the takeoff, you do the input. And again, please, please, please remember the north angle, you could be within 45 degrees. And unfortunately, even some plan checkers don't know this. And you cannot sometimes teach some older plan checkers. But once you have that model in there, all of your inputs are fed in, and then the analysis is done. We go back and forth and back and forth. And there are some items that I have which most architects don't pick up. I will get into that. So now really this section of this on the residential is subdivided into a single family. Multifamily is divided into up to 3-story and 4-story or more. Now, they call it a high rise, and I can tell you that I have had enough, as structural engineer, I've actually had enough backgrounds working with the city hall, etc. A high rise, for example, for many years, I lived in Corona, was 55 feet. And the reason was their arm with the engine company didn't go more than 55 feet. Therefore, 56 feet was considered a high rise. The code says 75 feet, and then we have all these different formats. Now, a high rise has different implication on mechanical, on the electrical, when you're passing conduits in different arenas and different atmospheres, fire, NFPA, all that is happening. But at the same time, for now, I'm going to simply say a 3-story, because this code says so. 3 stories, multifamily, and 4-story or more is considered high rise. These are the sections of the code that is embedded. We are still in the, I'm still on the single family side, and I left my bird's eye view and now zooming in. Okay. Now, again, this is another little section I picked up from here and there, and where these sections are, what happened to the code, the code in terms of moving things around. They removed the multifamily as we know it from those 2 sections. They created subchapter 1012, etc. Then, believe it or not, as you all know, a multifamily is more of a commercial property. We know it as a commercial, and sometimes even in San Diego, a two-unit complex was considered a commercial. But if you have a corridor, a community room, a lobby, lounges, etc., those are purely non-residential. Now, If you're within a unit 504, that unit interior of that will be considered residential. So that's this little micro spiel that I gave you. Again, you have the new mandatory stuff. You got the prescriptive requirement. You got the addition and alteration. Additional alteration is a flavor and is in the subsection because many of it comes out very odd. They sort of put it on a subsection, and the City Hall really looks at it on a one-to-one basis. Okay. So now, what I did was the following. Most of you take the put the mandatory forms and you just slap it on the sheet and you go from there. And you take the green code, you slap it on the sheet, you go from there. And just please, please, please worry about Jacobian Myers knocking on your door. Some of these are very, very critical. And I know a lot of architects just slap them on there, but then they do conflict with what's inside your design. So you got to verify that these are critical issues. Now, let me go back. I am only going through the mandatory measures in a more, I'm fine tooth through this. I'm going through this slowly. The new deck installation, you could be having a U value, and that's an R value of 5. The lighting requirements has been modified. And by the way, it hasn't been changed so much. Still, the dimming system is there. Hypothetically, and technically, you cannot have incandescent anymore. And if you do, they have made it in such a way that you will not have it. Okay, they don't tell you you must have a dimmer. They simply say you must have a 30%, 70%, 50%, 70%, and 100% capability of changing your lights within the room. Hey, just buy a $10 dimmer that works. I bought 40 of them out of Amazon and $17 this out of Home Depot. Use them and God bless. You have now. They don't tell you buy a dimmer. They simply say you got to do this, but a dimmer suffice. Okay. Ducts in conditioned space do not require insulation. Remember when I tried to do a cartoon and it didn't work? If you have the insulation within the lower part of the roof roof and not in the attic, when you are doing your ductwork, passing through the ductwork, you are now in the insulated in the conditioned space. Because of that, of course, you're not cooling the attic, but the envelope begins and ends where you put the insulation. Because of that, A, you get a little bit of credit on your Title 24. B, now the insulation value that they talk about, which is R6 and an R8, you could put an R4. You're fine because, by the way, soft flexes or flexible ducts come with insulation already. So you don't have to put the most expensive one. But personally, I like the insulation still to be there because from the source, which is where the air handler is, to the register, it travels 30, 40 feet, still losing energy. Please put the highest maximum. And by the way, most of the mechanical contractors don't have anything else other than R8 and R6. So they made the lighting simplified, and they simply said, if you put your ducts within the thermal envelope, we'll give you a little bit of a cookies or credit. The filters, it's not a change, but when you go back to mechanical code, energy code has made some verbiage, but it's not something for me to bring up. Gas water heater installations must be designated. And if you are putting heat pump, water heaters, etc., although you're putting a gas water heater, you must put a water source, heat pump water heater as well. So just to tell you that you can't just put this one and not the other. Now, I just only wanted to talk about the highlighted ones. There is one New integrated central fan integrated ventilation requires motorized control damper controls, etc., variable ventilation. If you put a central system, they want you to put integrated system. And again, it's very, very difficult. And how do you control it? The only time that I put these fans, I've had in San Diego, there was a giant little foyer with like a cylindrical element that I put a central fan there because it was impossible for me to vacate that area with my restroom fans, etc. But it simply says, if you put that in there, I want all these controls. I want control dampers there. I want them to be controlled, motorized with variable ventilation. So you just can't have a constant volume. The time that I did, I had a constant volume. Now, if you have a kitchen hood range, you must follow that. It's very simple. It simply says depending on the conditioned area, the vented kitchen range hood will be there, and they give you the duct size, and also it relates to whether the fuel is gas or electric. That makes a difference. Now, this one is one of those that gives me a heartburn. You have the energy recovery ventilation and you got the heat recovery ventilation. This is what it means. You have a water heater, which the flue duct is going through the roof. The issue is that the state says, I am thinking, there is still some heat in that flue. Can you grab some of that heat and bring it in? So now you have to put a heat exchanger. They do sell HRVs, okay? There are some items like energy recovery ventilation. We want whatever ventilation that you're doing, that is the heat is actually leaving the door, I want you to grab it. I don't want to open that discussion. Number one, it takes space. Number two, most of the ABC air conditioning contractors, and there are very, very few that I'm going to give respect to, okay? Most of them are, cookie cutters, etc. And there was one lawsuit that I recently was working on. The systems are getting more and more and more complex, to a point that my own phone, I think by the time I learn what to do with my phone, I have to get another one. The cars, the amount of electronics controls, et cetera, that is embedded onto these systems is for all these levels of sophistications are installed by very unsophisticated people. So when some guy simply wants to take a battery of a single phase system and wants to create something in a laboratory, fine, but don't do it in a home. My problem is that we do not have enough sophisticated installers to do this. Now, let me go back on the energy side of it. I am gaining X number of BTUs. The amount of energy to create this heat recovery unit, you can go to what's called a virtual life cycle analysis of a unit, how much water we use, energy used, et cetera, et cetera. Am I gaining all that energy that I spent to make the HRV? Am I getting that energy back? I will leave it as a PhD, et cetera. I could do it in the laboratory. It's very hard for me to get that justification. Now, when you talk about efficacy of a fan, your fans, it's throughout, and that's the efficacy of the fan for even your kitchen hood range. It has to be very, very efficient and must be less than 1 watts per CFM. So if it's a 50 CFM, it must be less than 50 watts. All that is there. So just please be ready for some of these. If the place, I worked on a house, it was 1200 amp of 3-phase. It was on Zuma Beach. The guy we were not allowed to know who the name of the person is. He would only come with helicopter. And the guy, and if you're talking about 20 years ago, the guy who designed the electronic system was not off the shelf. He wrote all the software, etc. So if he had sneeze and was getting a heartburn, nobody could open the door because he created all this super sophisticated system. So please, 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 if you buy, and Johnny Carson used to say that my video only showed 12 o'clock. He couldn't set up the timer on his video player. So these are one of the issues that I have. I want to apologize. I get into some issues I can't get out of it. Now, again, remember, energy storage system must be there. All the interconnections, all the dedicated raceways, all the elements. You actually have to put a little box there and say, please don't put anything there. You need 4 branch circuits just for that. The bus bar rating for the panel must be 225. You must put the transfer switch because go pop, 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 right. If there is a transfer switch, the ones that I was studying a couple of months ago, they come in a complete package with the system. And by the way, 90% of those batteries are European made. I did a full 5 weeks analysis on all of them. And just to let you know, they're all same. They mostly are used in Europe. It sort of came to town to our side of the pond. And now you have it. And by the way I know it, their voltage rating is 261 to 265. Those are Europeans. In the United States, it's 195 to 245. Anyway, now, new electric ready requirement for the space heating, cooking, clothes dryers, gas equipment, et cetera, et cetera. All that infrastructure must be there and must be accounted for. You cannot say, I don't have it, therefore I'm putting a 0 on my panel schedule. No, sir, that's future. By the way, if you put a sign in a commercial unit and you have to put 1200 watts for it, you may not have a sign, but the 1200 watts has to be there. And then you have a receptacle, which must be within 25 feet of an appliance. That is there. Guess what? Although you're not putting it to 1500 watts there, it must be on your panel schedule of 1500. That all builds up and adds up your transformers. So hello, this is big. This is big time. We have discussed. Okay. Now, again, the way the system is doing the analysis, the energy design rating metrics, that is new, very, very new. It's literally embedded, and there is an EDR1, EDR2, et cetera, all that will be getting into the solar, into our performance compliance. It comes out, if it complies, fabulous, we are done. But just in case, we talked about EDR, but now it's part of the Title 24. Now, again, more on the prescriptive compliance, space heating, in different, it must be a heat pump in these zones, and climate zones can, in other zones can be either a heat pump or gas heating system. Again, I can tell you that there is something in mechanical design, it's called heating degree days, which is how many hours do you need to heat, and in terms of temperature and number of days. We use that as a basis. From my point of view, north of Santa Barbara is cold. And if you get to the mountainous areas, it's cold. Those heat pumps will suffer, and you got to go in and be using the hydronic system. Let me give you one more element for your knowledge. First of all, you can go to different weather climate system and look up the worst temperature in the range for an entire year. Heat pump does not do a good job, although companies like Samsung, et cetera, say they have modified it. By the way, heat pump was an American system, but they picked it up and they ran with it. But also VRF, the same thing. It was an American product. But what happens in a heat pump, if the temperature gets close to the freezing point, 32 degrees or so, Heat pump does not do a very good job. Again, Samsung says they can go lower, but I am just a chicken. So, but you got to look in that up. And I have not verified these particular other zones, 3, 4, 13, and 14, but just to give you, that is my 2 cents. By the way, the maximum, if you want to do, and let me go to the next one. Okay, water heating system, again, you have to have the heat pump system, as we discussed, or a solar water heating system. Just want to give you one item. If you remember from, I am old enough to know there was the president, the president from Alabama, I forgot. That was the time of that in 1978, the oil embargo happened. We had all these water, the solar water heating system. And then 10 years later, they were begging, they were paying people to come back and take it out. If you install these items, you must maintain them. Water is corrosive. Water has no problem in acting like an acid. With all the corrosion, with all the sedimentation that they leave, the life expectancy of these water heat systems is low. Jimmy Carter, so sorry. So I am begging you, if you want to give this to the client, fine. You tell them, write a giant font, 14, 18, 20, whatever, that you must maintain it dearly, because these systems, water systems, will not last long. By the way, just one item for you, that a solar panels are dedicated for a 25-year lifespan. Fine. But what about all the plastics that are inside that chamber? There is so much plastic elements within that, all the elements which are the sealants, so that the water doesn't get into. Those are thermoplastics. Those will not last, but they have it committed for 25 years. I will leave it at that. Climate, you can use a gas, and in climate zone 3, 14, 3, 4, 13, 14, you can use instantaneous, maximum of 200,000. By the way, let me tell you this, 200,000 is actually 199,000. Why they call them instantaneous 199,000? Because at 200,000, the definition becomes a boiler. And once you have a boiler, you have to have a 1-hour rated room. So watch out. You can put 599,000 water heaters in a room. It's not a 1-hour rated. But as soon as you put a boiler and has a 200,000 rating, it shall be 1-hour rating with all the sophistications that you all know as an architect, what goes in a 1-hour rated room. So you can have a gas instantaneous water heater. It's allowed if the space conditioning system is heat pump. Now they are simply saying, hello, I want to let you have a hydronic system using this system, but I will no more comments. Again, we talked about it, new dwelling units that are 500 square feet or less. They can use instantaneous electric water heaters. We use them for commercial all the time. They've been using them for many, many years. The only thing you got to watch out for shower purposes, you have to look at that, because you're running, our body temperature is 98 degrees. The water that hits our body must be warmer. Let's call it 105 degrees. What is happening is that in winter, the water that comes out from the ground is about 50, 55. The delta is from 55 to 105. That means you have a 50-degree rise. You're taking a shower. Let's say you're using a clean coat and you're at about 2 GPM. You want to have 2 GPM of that, because whatever that's coming out of the ground at 2 GPM will be at 105. And you got to look up the rating of that water heater, etc. Please, and the KW associated with that. And that's one of my pet peeves, using these instantaneous for shower, etc., etc. That's another discussion. Again, new dwelling unit with a conditioned floor space of 500 square feet do not require a whole house fan. It's too small. It doesn't make sense. By the way, if you have a bathroom there and you use that 20 CFM bathroom fan, it will possibly, I've not done the calculation, possibly will justify the whole house. Revises and updates photovoltaic language of clarity, including solar roof access area, etc. By the way, we're going to know what's called SARA. SARA is not a lady. It's solar access roof area. When we get to the calculations, the question is, especially in the high rise, it doesn't make sense because you got so much items on the top of the roof. You have no room for, you don't have enough SARA to begin with. And then that's what the calculation says. So you have to do that calculations. But if you are a complex and you are a high rise, they will include your parking lot and they will include your parking roofing and any other roofing as part of your calculations for how much kW you need. And by the way, the numbers are very, very high. You will see some examples. Again, if the PV system you calculated by that equation is less than 1.8 kW, you don't need it. Because I only got very, very few moments, I may leave this, and because this is not a high impact area, these are the luminaires and the lighting. There was very minimum impact. I may leave it because on my next 11 minutes, I really want to jump on the major issues. So I can talk about this, but I really want to jump. The only one issue that I have is this. You can go get a luminaires with a screw base, and screw base, which means that it was an A19 screw base. It was incandescent. And the code says, if I come to you and I see you have a screw-based luminaires, the lamp must be Joint Appendix JA8 guidelines. There is an appendix. It has to be that model. It's just an FYI. By the way, another story. What is a chandelier versus a chandelier? The guy puts in a fan because he knows he's going to be putting this superb a chandelier with all these incandescents, because all the connections to a fan is the same as a chandelier, because chandelier takes power, it takes switch, a lot of power, a lot of items. So they put a chandelier for $39 from Home Depot. They take it out and put a chandelier. By the way, I am a Zaworsky fan, so I have 3 chandeliers, just an FYI. One has 57 light fixtures, one 39, and the other one 24. Anyway, when you're from Iran, you like chandeliers, you can show off. That's what it's like Mercedes. Okay, I'm still going to go forward. And okay, let me give you this mandatory measures. These are all these slides are from JA, from SMUD. It talks about the R5. We discussed it. You could be on the roof, the rafters, but the rafters are sometimes 2x4, 2x8, very minimum amount of load. Hey, you got to put net or you got to do something. And I would beg you to put both locations. A building envelope. Let me move on because I got some other items. The only couple of items, this was there before, labeling was there, but you must also amplify it. The labeling on the fenestrations has to be there permanently there. That's how it is read. But they have the stickers on it for plan check, and it could be taken out later. And the installation certification, we do have an IIQ. Now you have the Hirsch certifier. You will have installation quality, somebody who has to come by and certify your installation as well. That's coming up. Oh, let me move on. I got only 8 minutes now. Oh, there was one item, and I'm going to beg all of you. Slab edge insulation. Slab edge insulation was there for God knows how long. I can guarantee you none of the contractors have seen it, or most of you have not seen this. And slab edge insulation is actually goes how many feet of your when you have the slab and you're sputting against the earth, and the slab could be 16 inches, could be 18 inches or 24 inches. You can be putting insulations against it. And how much insulation? All that is in the Title 24. A majority of people have missed it. Is not installed and nobody puts in. Just an FYI. Fire retarders, they're not retards, by the way. The vapor retards are retarded. They are not retards, by the way. They are not. All I can tell you is that one of the problem that we have is that when you put the vapor retardants, they are fantastic for getting points for your Title 24s. Architects do not have them on their details. So they don't put it in. They're having an issue. Just an FYI, please update your vapor barriers, etc. Please put that in. There is one more. There is a continuous insulation that you come in and you wrap. Now, the beauty is that I see it in most commercial, especially on the apartments. You have it wrapped, what's called the continuous insulation. And then you have what goes inside your metal or wood studs. Those are called cavities, but you could have it continuous. Many architects do not have those details, and by the time they go to do the Title 24s, they are too late. I beg you, update yours. And I do know the problem of connections, because you have to connect the nailers, etc. Maybe you have to plywood the hell out of the place and then put that in so that the nailing for the chicken scratch will work. For the scratch code will work. But all I can tell you is that is a miss issue. Another item on fenestration for the next 6 minutes is that when the solar heat gains are put in, and I have many samples. Again, I get samples, a ton of samples from TM Golf. When you see those, the solar bands are different. If this one says the solar heat gain is 0.23, this one's 0.19. When you put them side by side next to the window, they will have different propagation of the sun going through it. Now you got a rainbow, different colors of. So please at least verify that they are all uniform. One other issue, these folding doors. Folding doors are very, very difficult for them to have a very low U values because of their nature. The only issue is work with those companies so that they could push them for higher and higher. But if you have these folding doors, something else has to give up, okay? Something else, so you have to worry about one versus the other. Again, this is a barter system that the program does, especially with one more item. Again, these are what I can remember. God created
14.
God created the sun and the earth, etc., to rotate in certain different directions. We want the solar panels face the sun south. Now, you can simply say, okay, hey, guys, I have my number of kWs, but they're all facing the north. North gets you about 30 BTUs per hour. East gets you about 100 or so. The south gives you about 120 or so. And then the west gives you about 160 BTUs per hour per square feet. You really want the sun. You're spending all this money. By the way, by the time you put the batteries, etc., one discussion says, by the time I put all of these, why not to put the solar in? Why not to put the batteries in? So I have it. I've done all that investment to install it. I just go buy the rest of it. I go get a loan, buy a cheaper car, but I put that in. But the sun is facing the north. All these fancy roofs that you have, is God bless you, is beautiful. But we got to make sure that these solar panels work. One more issue, when you put the solar panels, the fire marshal has rules and regulations. I want to have access, and at least it's in the older code, but actually the fire marshals came out, County of Orange came, they picked it up, and everybody. So you have to have a 3-foot skirt so you can fight the fire. So, and if the fire department cannot go to the roof, they will let the building burn. That is, they cannot risk that concern. One more item, just an FYI, because they have to make holes into the roof in order to vacate the smoke. They have to make holes. The fire department says if you have a conduit that holds the solar ducts, solar wires, and it is daytime and they're hot or is getting fed by the batteries, or there is some sort of a reverse system, they want to make sure that all those conduits are 18-inch below the roof line. Why? Because their saw is 18 inches. They do not want to get electrocuted. Anyway, I'm going in because I got 2 minutes. I want to find out what else can I tell you. Hey, by the way, you can have a decorative gas appliances, gas log, et cetera, et cetera. Cal Green Code controls you all the way, every which way. Just an FYI, if you don't have them, this was the kitchen hood in the last 2 minutes that we discussed. You can have the different floor areas. Your electric range hood has to be 110 CFM or capture efficiency of 50%. Or if it's a gas, it has to be 180 CFM, 70%. So depending on the square footage, etc. But these giant hoods that I see in homes, they're like commercial grade. If they want to capture, what is a capture velocity? Is when you have just simply take a little piece of cloth and throw it in there and just blow on it. If that cloth is moving, if there is enough capture velocity for it to move, there's enough kinetic energy for it to move. Those are the concerns that you have. So the factories for larger hoods from manufacturers, they give you CFMs of far, far higher than this. So this is for you to know if you're going for a boilerplate, hoods, kitchen hoods, those are your minimum that you have to have. In 1 minute, if there is any questions, I am at your service, and I know chat shows 14.
Yes.
If you can.
Yes, Tom, we've got 3 questions. So I'm going to go to the first one at 610. Is the ESS requirement for brand new ground up homes or for major remodel addition projects as well?
Let me give you this. Whatever I have said is for new. The alteration, etc., has a little subsection. Let me just part blanche say new. Yes, you required. Next one.
Can you break up a large home into 500 square foot maximum zones and provide tankless hot water and hydronic HVAC system for each compartmentalized zone?
Okay. When it was Saturday Night Live and the guy went in there and says, I want a hamburger, I want a French fries, Jim Belushi would simply say cheeseburger, cheeseburger, cheeseburger. That simply says, I did not understand the question. I'm only thinking of cheeseburger. And that's a lot of cheeseburgers. My thinking is that if you have a very smart, because again, I'll give you one example. A home is defined as certain body. A home has to have a kitchen. His home has to have a bedroom. So if you're breaking down to 500 square feet, I will guarantee you they will ask for a kitchen in every one of those 500 square feet spaces. Because a home is defined, and actually it isn't a definition, and if it's not in the code, is in Merriam-Webster dictionary, you have to verify from the part 1 of the Title 24, which version. But a home is defined as a compilation of those items: a bedroom, a living quarter, and you have to have amenities for bathroom, etc. So I will guarantee the answer is no.
Okay, I believe that's it in chat. If I missed one, then please add it right now, and I'll go ahead and read it off. Or feel free to take yourself off mute and ask Sam directly. I don't see anything coming through, Sam. So what I do see are lots of thanks, and they're looking forward to part 2 next Tuesday. Okay, thank you, everyone. I see you, they are leading some. I think your screen froze. I am not going to worry about that. I will just look forward to seeing you all next week. You will get the new link. Remember, you have to attend that one as well to get your four total units. And you've already registered, so that'll get taken care of. So thank you again, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Bye.